Tuesday afternoons were laundry day. I'd been doing Colin's dry cleaning prep for 15 years, checking pockets, removing cufflinks, making sure nothing got ruined. It was routine, mindless, the kind of task you do while thinking about a dozen other things. I pulled Colin's gray blazer from the closet, the one he wore to client meetings. My hand slipped into the inner pocket, feeling for loose change or receipts. Instead, I found an envelope. 2 plane tickets slid out into my palm. First class to Cancun, departing Friday, 3 days from now. Return flight the following Thursday, a full week away. My first thought was confusion. Colin hadn't mentioned a trip. My second thought was excitement. Maybe this was a surprise for us, a spontaneous vacation. Then I actually looked at the names printed on the tickets. Colin Harrison. Vanessa Mitchell. I stared at those names, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. Vanessa was my cousin. My younger cousin who came to family dinners, who babysat Ethan when he was little, who'd been woven into our lives for years. Why would Colin have plane tickets with Vanessa's name? "Mom!" I jumped, nearly dropping the tickets. Ethan stood in the laundry room doorway, his backpack still slung over one shoulder. He must have just gotten home from school. "Hey, sweetie," I said, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. "I didn't hear you come in." His eyes went to the tickets in my hand, and something flickered across his face. Not surprise, something else, something knowing. "Oh," he said calmly, "those are for Dad and Aunt Vanessa." The laundry room tilted slightly. "What?" "The plane tickets. They're going to Cancun together." My 13-year-old son said this like he was commenting on the weather. Casual, matter of fact. "How do you know that?" I asked carefully, trying to keep my voice steady. Ethan looked at me with an expression that was unsettling in how mature it seemed. Too knowing, too certain. He wasn't guessing or speculating. He knew. A small smile crossed his face, not happy, but determined. "I planned a surprise for you, Mom. Don't worry, you're going to want to see this." He pulled his phone from his pocket, tapped the screen a few times, then handed it to me. "What is this?" "Just look." I took the phone with shaking hands. The screen showed a folder labeled Evidence with dozens of files inside, screenshots, photos, videos, documents. I clicked on the first one. A text message conversation between 2 people. I recognized Colin's texting style immediately, the way he abbreviated certain words, his punctuation patterns. The messages made my stomach drop. "Can't wait for Cancun. Finally a whole week just us." I know, I hate pretending around everyone, especially around her. "Soon we won't have to hide anymore." The contact name at the top read V. My hands started trembling as I scrolled to the next file. A video clip. I pressed play. Colin's home office appeared on screen. I recognized his desk, his chair, his diplomas on the wall behind him. He was on a video call, and the woman on his screen was Vanessa. They weren't discussing anything professional. They weren't talking like cousins-in-law or family friends. They were talking like lovers. I clicked through more files, my vision blurring. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, financial records showing money transfers I'd never known about, photos of Colin and Vanessa together in places he'd never mentioned visiting, a timeline document showing dates and locations, cross-referenced with times Colin had told me he was working late or traveling for business. 3 years. The timeline went back 3 years. I looked up from the phone at Ethan, who was watching me with that same calm, determined expression. "How long have you known?" I whispered. "About a year. I've been collecting proof. I wanted to make sure you had everything before I told you, so Dad couldn't lie his way out of it." My 13-year-old son. My baby. Standing there like a young man, protecting me from a truth he'd been carrying alone. I couldn't speak. The tickets were still in my other hand, concrete proof of a betrayal I'd never seen coming. And in Ethan's phone was evidence of years of lies. The laundry basket sat forgotten at my feet, Colin's blazer crumpled on top. Everything I thought I knew about my life had just shattered. 15 years ago, I was 23 and finishing my teaching credential. I worked part-time at a coffee shop near the university to pay rent, pulling espresso shots while dreaming about my own classroom someday. Colin came in every Tuesday and Thursday morning, always ordering the same thing: black coffee, no room for cream. He was 25, dressed in business casual, carrying rolled-up architectural plans under his arm. The third week, he introduced himself. By the fifth week, he was asking me out. "I've been trying to get the courage for a month," he said, smiling that charming smile. "Finally decided if I waited any longer, someone else would ask first." I said yes. Colin was ambitious, confident, full of plans for the future. He talked about the buildings he wanted to design, the firm he'd start someday, the life he wanted to build. He made me feel like I was part of that vision, essential to his dreams. We married 2 years later in a ceremony at my mother's church, small but beautiful. Vanessa was one of my bridesmaids. She was 18 then, just starting college, radiant in the emerald dress I'd chosen. I remembered Colin dancing with her at the reception, multiple times. I'd noticed but thought it was sweet, him making an effort with my younger cousin, making her feel included. My mother had whispered to me during the reception, "He's very attentive to Vanessa." "He's just being nice, Mom. She doesn't know many people here." My mother hadn't said anything else, but her expression suggested she wanted to. Ethan was born 2 years into our marriage. Those early years were exhausting but happy, or at least I thought they were. Sleepless nights, endless diapers, the chaos of new parenthood. Colin's career was taking off, and I'd gotten my first teaching position at Roosevelt Elementary. We built a comfortable life, 3-bedroom house in a good school district, annual vacations to the coast, weekend soccer games and school fundraisers. And Vanessa was always there. She was the fun aunt, the cool young cousin who brought Ethan expensive toys and took him to baseball games. She came to Sunday dinners, celebrated every holiday with us, was part of our family rhythm. I'd loved having her around. My own sister lived across the country, and Vanessa filled that void. Someone to talk to laugh with, to share the boring details of daily life. Now, standing in my laundry room with evidence of betrayal in my hands, I could see all the moments I'd missed. The time 2 years ago when I'd walked into the kitchen during a family barbecue and found Colin and Vanessa standing very close by the counter. They'd jumped apart, just slightly, barely noticeable, when I entered. "Just showing Colin something funny on my phone," Vanessa had said, laughing. I'd believed her without question. The times Colin worked late and Vanessa mentioned she was also working late downtown. "Crazy how busy we both are," she'd say at family dinners. The inside jokes they'd developed, references to things I wasn't part of, moments they'd shared that didn't include me. "You had to be there," became a phrase I heard constantly, the way Vanessa always asked about Colin when she called. "How's Colin doing with that big project?" Not, "How are you?" or "How's my favorite cousin?" Always Colin first. I thought she was being thoughtful, taking interest in my husband because he was family. Last Christmas, Vanessa had given Colin an expensive watch. "I saw it and thought of you," she'd said, while her gift to me was a generic candle set. I'd felt a tiny ping of hurt but dismissed it. Vanessa had always been closer to Colin than to me, I'd rationalized. They had similar interests, similar personalities. I'd explained away every single sign. The texts on Ethan's phone showed a different story. Colin to Vanessa, "Jen has no idea. She trusts both of us completely. She always has." He was right. I had trusted them completely. That was the part that hurt most, not just the betrayal, but how thoroughly I'd been fooled. How easy it had been for them to lie to my face while I smiled and welcomed Vanessa into my home, into my life, into every corner of my family. I looked at Ethan, who was still waiting patiently for my reaction. "When does your father get home?" I asked quietly. "He texted me an hour ago, said he'd be late. Client dinner." I pulled up Colin's location on the family tracking app we all shared. He wasn't at any restaurant downtown. He was at the Riverside Hotel, the same hotel that appeared on multiple receipts in Ethan's evidence folder. I couldn't stop staring at the tracking app. That little dot showing Colin's location at the Riverside Hotel, not moving, just sitting there like an accusation. "Mom," Ethan said gently, "come sit down. Let me explain everything." I followed him to the living room on numb legs. We sat on the couch, and Ethan began talking with a calmness that seemed impossible for a 13-year-old discussing his father's affair. "It started about a year ago," he said. "I noticed Dad getting text messages late at night. He'd always leave the room to answer them, and when he came back, he'd be in a different mood, distracted or really happy, depending on what the message said." "You've known for a year?" My voice cracked. I wasn't sure at first. I thought maybe I was imagining things. Ethan looked down at his hands. "Then one day I borrowed Dad's iPad for homework because my tablet was dead. It synced to his phone automatically, and messages started popping up." "From Vanessa?" He nodded. They weren't messages you send to your wife's cousin. I took screenshots before I even really understood what I was doing. Just instinct, I guess. My 13-year-old son, seeing messages that shattered his family, and his first thought was to document them. "Why didn't you tell me then?" "I wasn't sure what to do. I'm 13, Mom. I didn't know if I was understanding things right, and I was scared." His voice wavered for the first time. "I didn't want it to be true. I kept hoping I'd misunderstood, that there was some explanation. But there wasn't. No. So I started paying more attention. I created a folder on my phone and started taking screenshots whenever Dad's messages synced to the family computer. I noted times when he said he was one place, but the tracking app showed him somewhere else. I thought about all those months. Ethan carrying this terrible knowledge alone, watching his father lie, watching me believe those lies. I even made a spreadsheet," he continued. "Dates, times, locations, cross-referencing what Dad said with where he actually was. The discrepancies were constant. Ethan, you shouldn't have had to do this. You're a kid. I'm old enough to know right from wrong, and this was wrong." His jaw set in a way that reminded me of my own father. The worst part was watching it happen at family dinners, watching them look at each other when they thought no one noticed. Watching Aunt Vanessa hug you and tell you she loved you, knowing what she was doing behind your back. I felt sick imagining Ethan sitting at the dinner table, seeing things I'd been blind to. What changed? Why tell me now? 2 weeks ago, I overheard Dad on the phone with her. He didn't know I was home. I'd gotten dismissed early from school for a teacher planning day. He was in his office and I heard him say, "Jen will never know. She trusts both of us completely. We've gotten away with it this long. We can keep going." The words hit me like a physical blow. That's when I decided documenting wasn't enough anymore. He was so arrogant about it, so confident he'd fooled you. It made me angry. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. "You don't deserve to be treated like that. You're the best person I know." And he was laughing about lying to you. "So you bought a camera?" He looked sheepish. "With my birthday money and what I earned mowing lawns." I put it in Dad's office, angled at his desk. I got videos of him on calls with her, calls where they talked about being together, about the affair, about you. I closed my eyes, not sure I wanted to know what they'd said about me. Then I found out about the plane tickets. Dad had printed them last week and left them in his office. That's when I knew I had to tell you. He was planning to go away with her for a whole week, and he'd told you it was a solo work retreat. A work retreat. Colin had mentioned it casually over dinner 3 nights ago, saying he needed focused time away to work on a major project proposal. I'd encouraged him to go. Over the following weeks I now realized Ethan had been preparing for this moment. I'd been completely oblivious while my son built his case. Looking back, I could see the changes in him. Small things I'd attributed to normal teenage development. He'd been quieter than usual. His grades had dipped slightly in November. His history teacher had emailed me about missed assignments. I'd talked to Ethan about it, and he'd promised to do better. He had. But I hadn't asked why he'd struggled in the first place. He'd stopped inviting friends over as often. When I'd mentioned it, he'd shrugged and said they hung out at other people's houses now. He'd lost weight. Not much, but enough that I'd noticed his jeans fitting looser. When I'd asked if he was eating enough at lunch, he'd said he was fine, just growing taller and stretching out. All signs of stress I'd completely missed because I'd been busy with my own life, teaching, grading papers, managing the household, planning Ethan's 8th grade activities. While I'd been organizing bake sales and parent-teacher conferences, my son had been carrying the weight of our family's destruction. "Show me everything," I said now, my voice steadier than I felt. Ethan went through the evidence folder methodically, explaining each piece. Text messages spanning 3 years. The early ones were flirtatious, testing boundaries. "You looked beautiful today at dinner. I can't stop thinking about you. This is wrong, but it feels so right." Then they became bolder. Planning secret meetings. "Tuesday night, usual place. Told Jen I have a client presentation. She'll never suspect. Hotel receipts from the Riverside, the Westin, the Marriott downtown. Sometimes on nights Colin had told me he was working late, sometimes on weekends when he'd said he had client meetings, restaurant bills from expensive places I'd never been to, 2-person meals, wine, desserts, dates that corresponded with nights I'd eaten dinner alone or with Ethan, financial records showing money transfers from our joint account into a separate account I'd never known existed, thousands of dollars over the past 2 years. "He's been stealing from us?" I asked, stunned. "Funding the affair, I think. Hotels aren't cheap, neither are the gifts." "Gifts?" Ethan pulled up photos. Jewelry boxes, designer handbags, expensive perfume. All things I'd never received, all purchased with our money and given to Vanessa. There were photos, too, pictures Ethan had taken from a distance. Colin and Vanessa at a cafe across town, holding hands across the table, at the park, walking close together, getting into Colin's car outside Vanessa's apartment building at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night. "You followed them?" "A few times, when Dad said he was working late but the tracker showed him at places that weren't his office." Ethan looked almost apologetic. "I took the bus. I know I probably shouldn't have, but I needed proof that couldn't be explained away." The videos were hardest to watch. Colin in his office on video calls with Vanessa. The intimacy between them was undeniable. The way they looked at each other, the soft voices, the casual touches when they were together in person in some of the footage. One clip showed them in what looked like a hotel room. Colin's voice, "I hate going home after seeing you. Hate pretending I don't love you." Vanessa's response, "Soon. Once you figure out the right way to tell Jen, we can stop hiding. I just need to time it right, make sure I don't lose everything in a divorce." So he'd been planning to leave me, eventually, once he'd secured his financial interests. Another video showed a family dinner from last month. Ethan must have propped his phone up somewhere to record. I watched myself serving food, smiling, completely unaware. Watched Colin and Vanessa exchange a look across the table when they thought no one was paying attention. Watched Vanessa's hand briefly touch Colin's under the table. All happening right in front of me while I chatted about Ethan's upcoming field trip. "There's more," Ethan said quietly, pulling up a document. "I hacked Dad's email." "Ethan, I know it was wrong." But his password was easy to guess, variations of passwords I'd seen him type. He opened an email thread. "These go back 3 years. This is when it started." The first email was from Vanessa to Colin. "Thank you for the advice about my marketing presentation. You're so much easier to talk to than Jen sometimes. She doesn't really understand the business world like you do." Colin's response, "Happy to help anytime, and I know what you mean. Jen's great, but she lives in her teacher bubble. It's refreshing to talk to someone who gets the corporate world." They'd bonded over criticizing me, over feeling superior to me. The emails evolved over months. Friendly advice became flirtation. Flirtation became plans to meet for coffee. Coffee became dinners. Dinners became hotel rooms. 3 years of documented betrayal, all compiled by my 13-year-old son. "The plane tickets were the final piece," Ethan said. "I saw them when Dad printed them last week. That's when I put them in his jacket pocket and waited for you to find them doing laundry. I knew you would. You always check pockets. You planned this, the timing of everything. I needed you to find them naturally, so you'd ask questions. Then I could show you everything else, so Dad couldn't say I was making things up or misunderstanding. I looked at my son, this brave, heartbroken, determined boy who'd protected me when no one else would. I'm sorry you had to do this alone. I'm sorry I had to do it at all, Ethan said. I wish Dad was the person I thought he was. I sat on the couch staring at Ethan's phone until the screen went dark. My hands were still shaking, and I couldn't seem to make them stop. 3 years. 3 years of lies, elaborate deceptions, stolen money, secret meetings. All while I'd been teaching grammar to 5th graders and packing Colin's lunches and believing we had a good marriage. Mom? Ethan's voice pulled me back. What are you going to do? What was I going to do? The question felt enormous, paralyzing. Then something shifted inside me. The shock began hardening into something else. Anger, clarity, determination. I'd spent a year being fooled. I wasn't going to spend another day being a victim. I need to call someone, I said, scrolling through my contacts. Someone who can help us handle this the right way. I called Diane Chen, my best friend since college. She answered on the second ring. Jen, hey, what's up? I need your help, legal help. Can you come over right now? There must have been something in my voice because Diane didn't ask questions. I'll be there in 20 minutes. While we waited, I made Ethan send me copies of everything in his evidence folder. Every screenshot, every photo, every video, every document. I wanted backups of backups. We should also print hard copies, Ethan suggested, in case Dad tries to delete digital files somehow. My 13-year-old son, thinking like a lawyer. We were still printing when Diane arrived. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. What happened? I handed her the plane tickets first, then Ethan's phone with the evidence folder open. Diane was silent as she scrolled through, her expression growing harder with each swipe. As a family lawyer, she'd seen plenty of affairs. But this one hit close to home. She'd been at my wedding. She knew Vanessa. She'd had dinner at this house dozens of times with Colin sitting across the table. Finally, she looked up. How long have you known? About 2 hours. And Ethan compiled all of this? Over the past year, Ethan said quietly. Diane looked at him with something like awe. This is incredibly thorough. The timestamps, the cross-referencing, the financial records. Some of my professional investigators don't do this well. I wanted to make sure Mom had everything she needed, so Dad couldn't lie. Diane nodded slowly, then turned to me. Okay, here's what we're going to do. First, we protect your assets. How much money is in your joint accounts right now? I logged into our banking app. About $43,000. We're moving half of that into a new personal account in your name only. Tonight, Colin's been siphoning money into hidden accounts, which means he's been planning his exit strategy. We need to secure your portion before he tries anything else. She walked me through setting up a new account, transferring money, documenting everything. Next, we need to talk about confrontation timing. When does Colin think he's leaving for this Cancun trip? Friday morning, 3 days from now. Perfect. We wait until Thursday night. Let him think he's gotten away with everything, that he's home free. Meanwhile, we prepare. I'll draft divorce papers. We'll compile all of Ethan's evidence into a legal format. We'll document every asset, every account, every piece of property. You think this will go to divorce? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Diane gave me a look. Jen, he's been having an affair with your cousin for 3 years. He's stolen money from your family. He's planning a week-long vacation with his mistress while lying to your face. There's no coming back from this. She was right. Some betrayals were too deep to forgive. What about Vanessa? I asked. What about her? She needs to know we found out, that there are consequences. Diane smiled grimly. Oh, she'll find out. After we confront Colin, we'll make sure your entire family knows exactly what she's done. She won't be welcome at another family dinner for the rest of her life. The next 3 days were surreal. Colin came home each evening completely normal. He kissed me hello, asked about my day, helped Ethan with homework. He talked about his upcoming work retreat, reminding me he'd be gone for a week. I'll miss you, he said Wednesday night, pulling me close. I let him hug me, my body stiff, thinking about where he'd really be and who he'd really be with. "I'll miss you too," I lied. Thursday evening arrived. Colin's suitcase sat by the front door, packed for his work retreat to Cancun. He'd be leaving early the next morning, or so he thought. Diane had spent the past 3 days preparing everything: divorce papers drafted, evidence compiled into legal format, a comprehensive list of assets and accounts. She'd even contacted a few colleagues who specialized in cases involving hidden finances and infidelity. After dinner, I asked Colin to sit down in the living room. "We need to have a family meeting." He looked confused but settled onto the couch. "Everything okay?" "Ethan, come here, please," I called. Ethan appeared from his room, his face calm but determined. He sat next to me, across from his father. I placed the plane tickets on the coffee table between us. "Want to explain these?" Colin's face went pale. For a moment he just stared at them, then his expression shifted into something practiced. "Jen, I can explain." "Don't." My voice was steady, cold. "Don't insult me with more lies. Those are for a work thing, a conference. Vanessa is going too because her company has a presence there and we thought we could network." "Stop." I held up my hand. "I know everything, Colin." "Ethan, show your father what you showed me." Ethan connected his phone to the television and pulled up the compilation video he'd created. A 3-year timeline of the affair played out on our family TV, text messages, video footage of intimate conversations, hotel receipts, financial records showing hidden accounts and stolen money. Colin watched his lies projected on the screen, his face cycling through emotions: shock, fear, anger, panic. "You had no right," he started, looking at Ethan. "I had every right," Ethan said quietly. "You were lying to us, to Mom. Someone had to protect her. This is invasion of privacy. You went through my personal communications. You went through our family's money and gave it to your mistress," I cut in. "You want to talk about violations? Let's talk about how you stole from your own family to fund an affair with my cousin." Colin stood up, pacing. "Jen, please, let me explain. It's not what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like. 3 years, Colin. 3 years you looked me in the eye and lied." He tried a different approach, his voice softening. "It was a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I love you, Jen. I want to work this out. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. You don't love someone you betray for 3 years. You don't steal from someone you love. You don't plan vacations with their family member while pretending to go on work trips. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. A mistake is being late to dinner. This was 3 years of deliberate choices. You chose to start the affair. You chose to continue it. You chose to lie every single day." Colin looked at Ethan desperately. "Son, you have to understand." "I understand perfectly," Ethan said, his voice harder than I'd ever heard it. "I understand that you lied to Mom's face for 3 years. I understand that you stole money from our family. I understand that you were planning to keep lying tomorrow when you got on that plane with Aunt Vanessa. The only thing I don't understand is how you could do this to us." Colin's shoulders slumped. The fight seemed to drain out of him as he realized there was no talking his way out of this. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "I want you to leave this house tonight. Diane is my lawyer. We'll be filing for divorce. You can expect to be served papers within the week. This is my house too. Actually, the house is in both our names, and given the evidence of financial misconduct and adultery, I'm confident I'll be awarded primary residence, but we can let the court decide that." Colin looked around the living room, the home we'd built together, the family photos on the walls, the life he was losing. "Can we at least talk about this privately, without him here?" He gestured at Ethan. "No. Ethan is part of this family. He's the one who protected me when you were betraying me. He stays." Colin tried one more time. "Jen, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It meant nothing. If it meant nothing, you wouldn't have done it for 3 years. If it meant nothing, you wouldn't have stolen from us to buy her gifts. If it meant nothing, you wouldn't be packed to spend a week with her in Mexico." I stood up. "Pack your things. You have 1 hour. Then I want you gone. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Hotel, friend's house. Maybe Vanessa will take you in, though I doubt it once her family finds out what she's done. His eyes widened. You're going to tell people? Everyone's going to know, Colin. Your father, my mother, our friends, Vanessa's family. Everyone. Colin packed a bag with shaking hands, threw it in his car, and drove away. I watched his taillights disappear down the street, feeling nothing but relief. Ethan stood beside me at the window. I put my arm around his shoulders, and we stood there in silence for a long moment. You okay, Mom? I will be. After Colin left, I called Vanessa. She answered on the third ring, her voice cautious. Jen? What's going on? Colin just called me, freaking out. Come to my house. Right now. I'm kind of in the middle of, now, Vanessa, or I'll come to your apartment and I promise you don't want that scene in front of your neighbors. She arrived 20 minutes later, her face pale. She knew. Colin had obviously warned her. I didn't invite her to sit, just showed her Ethan's phone with the evidence folder open. She tried to speak, but I cut her off. I don't want to hear it. I don't want your excuses or your apologies or your explanations about how it just happened. Jen, please. Tears were streaming down her face now. You're my cousin. You sat at my dinner table. You played with my son. You hugged me and told me you loved me while sleeping with my husband for 3 years. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? You seduce my husband, lie to my face for years. And then what? He leaves me for you and we all pretend it's okay? I never meant to hurt you. But you did. Every single day for 3 years, you hurt me. You just made sure I didn't know about it. I moved toward the door and opened it. Get out of my house and out of my life. I never want to see you again. We're family. No, family doesn't do what you did. Get out. She left sobbing. I closed the door and locked it behind her. The next morning, I called my mother and told her everything. Patricia was silent for a long moment, then said, I never trusted him completely. I should have said something years ago. It wouldn't have changed anything, Mom. I wouldn't have believed it without proof. What do you need from me? Just support. And Vanessa is not welcome at family gatherings anymore. She won't be. I'll make sure the whole family knows what she's done. Colin's father, Howard, called later that day, trying to convince me to reconsider the divorce. For the sake of the family, he said. Your son destroyed this family when he started sleeping with my cousin. I replied, I'm just making it official. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. Diane was ruthless, using Ethan's evidence to paint a clear picture of Colin's betrayal, financial misconduct, and deception. Colin tried to fight for joint custody of Ethan, but the judge allowed Ethan to speak privately. When Ethan came out of the judge's chambers, he looked relieved. I told her everything. She said my preferences would be strongly considered given my age and the circumstances. The final judgment came 6 weeks later. I got the house, primary custody of Ethan, and a substantial financial settlement given Colin's hidden accounts and misuse of marital funds. Colin got visitation every other weekend, and the knowledge that his entire social circle now knew what he'd done. Vanessa moved to Portland 2 months later, unable to face the family judgment. Colin and Vanessa's relationship imploded within weeks of exposure. Apparently, affairs are less exciting when they're no longer forbidden. 6 months after that Thursday night confrontation, life had found a new normal. Ethan was thriving. His grades were back up, the weight of secret-keeping lifted. He saw Colin on weekends, though their relationship was strained. Colin was trying, awkwardly attempting to rebuild trust he'd shattered. I was in therapy, working through the betrayal, learning to trust again. Some days were harder than others. But I was healing. One evening, Ethan and I were making dinner together, something that had become our routine. Are you okay, Mom? Really okay? I considered the question honestly. I'm getting there. Some days are harder than others. But I have you, I have my job, I have good friends. And I have the truth now, even though it hurt to learn it. I'm sorry I had to be the one to show you. I stopped chopping vegetables and turned to face him. Don't be sorry. You protected me when no one else would. You were braver than most adults would be. Do you think Dad understands what he did wrong? I don't know, but that's not our responsibility anymore. As we sat down to eat, I looked at my son and felt genuine gratitude. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had revealed something important. I'd raised a young man with integrity, courage, and fierce loyalty. Colin and Vanessa had broken my trust, but they hadn't broken my family. They'd just shown me who my real family was. Ethan reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "We're going to be okay, Mom." I squeezed back. "We already are."